Hey everybody, this is my game Partizan, an immersive sim FPS similar to Half-Life and Deus Ex, but with faster paced combat and retro graphics. In my last video, I got Partizan onto Steam, and I just wanted to quickly thank everybody who wishlisted the game. We're currently at 900 wishlists, so thank you a ton. Also, for those who haven't wishlisted yet, you can do so by clicking the link in the description. Anyways, I have a ton of stuff to show you guys this devlog, so let's just get into it. I used to have grenades in the game a long time ago, and you could even see me using them in the first couple of videos. But somewhere along the way, with all the weapon refactoring and inventory changes, the grenade script broke. So the first thing that I wanted to do was remake the grenade. And after some light bug fixes and a new model, the HEG Grenade was back with some new features. You can now unpin the grenade and hold onto it. And indicated by the new light on the grenade, you can see how much time you've cooked it for. Then, as usual, you could throw it. You could keep on holding onto it, though I'm not too sure how well that strategy works. Overall, it's a ton of fun to have them back in the game. However, I think I need to work on enemies avoiding the grenade, as right now it's a little too easy to kill a lot of them with just one grenade. But anyways, after making the grenade, I found that it was really annoying to have to swap out your weapon in order to use them. So I thought it'd be cool if you were able to throw a grenade while shooting your main weapon, similar to how it works in Crisis. So you can now assign quick use items from your inventory, which allows you to use items by just pressing a button. And when you quick use the grenade, as expected, you throw a grenade. So now you don't have to stop and equip the grenade item just to throw a single grenade. But moving on, after making the quick use system, I thought it was finally about time that I finally add a healing item. So here's the Medstim. You have 3 shots before it runs out, each shot healing you about half your health. And looking at this cool liquid shader, you can tell how many shots you have left. Also, you can now overheal, indicated by this gradient. Your health can rise over your max health and will slowly decrease back to your max health after a few seconds. And with the quick use system already in place, I could easily add quick use functionality for the Medstim, allowing you to heal in the middle of combat without switching weapons. Anyways, with all this left arm implementation, I added the ability to hold items while having your gun out. Though, if you put your gun away, you could still hold things the old way, which I think will come in handy for puzzles since the things you're holding are centered. But moving on, the next thing I wanted to do was redo the enemy awareness system, since the old code I wrote for it was a mess and was really difficult to work with. I also wanted to split the enemy's spotted condition into multiple states before the player was detected. So now, when an enemy sees you, they first get suspicious, which just means that if they lose sight of you, they'll go back to whatever they were doing. Though, if you continue to be spotted, they'll start spotting, which just means that if they lose sight of you, they'll go to where they last saw you. And finally, if you keep on being visible, they'll then spot you, at which point they'll use separate combat logic and just start attacking you. After all those changes, stealth and enemy awareness feels a lot more consistent. Though, I think I need to work on how enemy goals are chosen, as they're really predictable and a bit boring right now. In the future, I'd like enemies to work together. Maybe one enemy attacks you while the other flanks and stuff like that. But that sounds pretty hard to make, so I'll save it for future me. Moving on, the next thing that I wanted to do was add a grappling hook. At first, I just imported the grappling hook code from one of my older games, Construct. Though I found that not only was the code terrible, but also Construct's grappling hook is way too fast and does not work well with Partizan's movement at all. So I opted for a much more realistic feel when remaking grappling hook code. In Construct, you could launch yourself from one side of the map to the other with just one swing, but in Partizan, you have to be a lot more methodical. You could swing, then maybe just hang there and shoot a couple guys, then you could just repel and move on. It's a lot more tactical than it was in Construct. Though it took a lot of effort to make the grappling hook feel realistic while still being fun, and not buggy. But I think it was worth it in the end, as it opens a lot of traversal and puzzle opportunities for the player, and it's just awesome. But anyways, in less interesting updates, the next thing I worked on was adding springs to all my procedural arm animations, like arm sway, arm bob, and recoil, which just makes everything look a bit juicier. But moving on, I then added a new weapon for the ensign, allowing the heavy to use the shotgun. Though after adding the shotgun to the heavy, I realized that eventually I think I'll want to make an animation overhaul, because right now, the heavy has very little impact. He really just behaves like any other ensign, except he's wearing armor, but at least the shotgun helps distinguish him a little bit. Anyways, after adding the shotgun to the heavy, I added this cool glass fracture system. No joke, I think I spent the most time on this out of anything else in the devlog, which is kinda sad. But the whole system is actually pretty complex, and I learned how to do a lot of things for the first time. Like, to make the glass pieces, I first generate a set of points based on some function. Then, I use a library to convert those points into a Voronoi texture, which is just represented by more points. Then, I offset those points to make it 3D, and finally, I triangulate it to make it a mesh. Also, if a fracture piece is being fractured, then I just clip the Voronoi texture before the rest of the process. To be honest, looking back at it now, it shouldn't have taken so long to write the system. But in the process of making it, I had to learn how to generate a Voronoi texture, generate and UV unwrap a mesh, and figure out how to make the pieces fall convincingly. So I learned quite a bit, and it was honestly pretty fun working on something unimportant. And speaking of unimportant, the next thing I made was this fancy scope shader. It works by first taking the current screen render, then adding distortion and zoom, then adding a vignette, and lastly a scope texture, which makes it look like you're actually looking for a scope instead of just some tinted glass like before. Then, continuing with shaders, I found that the fog asset I've been using for some reason tanked the FPS when the game was built. I'm not sure why, since it ran fine in the editor, but I really couldn't find a way around it. I mean, I probably could have just asked the developers for help, but this also just gave me a great excuse to work on more shader stuff. So here's my volumetric shader. It's super lightweight and performant, unlike the asset that I've been using, and here's how it works. You first take a mesh and make sure that it's rendered always, no matter if it's behind a wall or not. Then, you apply a ray marching algorithm. My ray marching algorithm basically just works like this. First, shoot a ray from your camera towards the object, and at some very small interval, check if the ray is inside or outside of the object. If it's inside the object, based on some primitive test, then add to your density value. Also, do a check if the current ray position is further or closer than the current depth texture's depth. If it's further, then obviously don't add density. And finally, just set this density value as the alpha in your shader. And that's basically it. You could add multiple test functions for different primitives. Currently I have cubes, cones, and frustums implemented, but you could probably figure out any number of primitives for your shader. But anyways, with the volumetric fog shader done, I decided that I wanted to start blocking out bits of a new level, since I've been getting pretty tired of working in this cliff level, as it's been around for a year at this point. So here's the new level. I think the level's looking pretty good so far, even though it's really just this one area that's done. Anyways, the last thing that I did was remake the inventory UI. Yet again. I really like diegetic UI in games, which just means UI that takes place in the game world, as opposed to just for the player, like the backpack in Gloomwood or the inventory from the forest. I really like both of these examples, so I decided to make the inventory UI in Partizan diegetic. So now the inventory UI and any future UI like the map and stuff will be put on this tablet. It was a ton of work moving all the UI functionality into world space, but I think it looks pretty sweet. Also, all the UI is now affected by post-processing, which means that the edges of the UI now glow a bit and are affected by chromatic aberration and stuff when you shoot or explosions happen. I think it makes the UI feel a lot more immersive and grounded, and it was definitely worth switching over to world space. Anyways, that's it for the past 2 months. I was really hoping that I'd post more often, though I feel like I say that every video, but I do really want to start posting more often. Especially since making a video like this with so many features means I can't really go into any details, some of which I think is pretty interesting. So in the future, I'll try and post at least once a month. So hold me to that. Also, I've got a couple of announcements. First off, I have a Discord server now, so if you want to join and hang out, you can do so by clicking the link in the description. Also, I've completely sold out and now have a Patreon, so if you want to support me or the making of Partizan, you can do so there. You'll get an awesome Discord role, early access to my videos, and your name at the end of every video. But please only support me if you have billions of dollars lying around. I'm not planning on stopping these devlogs anytime soon. And if you want to support me but don't have billions of dollars, go wishlist Partizan on Steam. Any amount of traction there helps me out a ton. Oh, and also subscribe, follow me on Twitter, and all that. Anyways, you can click over there to watch another one of my videos. See you guys in hopefully less than a month.